Uh, in this video, I would like to just walk you through the list of steps as well as the needed tools or the softwares, whatever that is needed to download the cloud connector, as well as what are the steps that are needed to configure a cloud connector with the on-premise system. So the first step would be like to navigate to the first and foremost important thing that we need in order to get the cloud connector into the system is to download the cloud connector, and you can get this cloud connector from tools.hana.com, tools.hanaondemand.com, where you have a section which actually deals with cloud. So under the cloud section, you just have to navigate to the bottom, where you can find a subheading with name cloud connector. So all the needed prerequisites as well as all the settings, whatever that you need for this cloud connector based on the different operating systems as well as architecture, you can find under this cloud connector section. So in case you are more interested to get more details about what cloud connector is and how the cloud connector configuration and as well as the lifecycle management of cloud connector, in case you are interested to understand more in detail, maybe you can just look at the documentation. And you can also look at the different prerequisites that are needed in order to install a local version of your cloud connector. In my case, I just had a Windows version, Windows machine. So I'm running currently on Windows machine. So I just downloaded a Windows file over here. So I already installed this um, within my system, but the steps are very much pretty simple. One of the important things which you have to keep in a note or keep in mind is that you should have a version, a JDK version of minimum 8. In my case, it was uh, make sure you have this version, at least a minimum version, which it expects is Java 1.8. So I already have it. So before you install or run the cloud connector MSI file, make sure that you have this installed. And as soon as you install MSI file, make sure that you restart your system. If in case you have some installation problems or finding the proper file path for the Java path issues, so I would recommend that you uninstall your existing Java runtime environment, or maybe if in case you are using a Java development kit, which includes also your Java runtime, so I would recommend that you uninstall this and then try to again reinstall the new Java version, or maybe the compatible Java version would be obviously in Java 8. And then what you do is that then again try to install this cloud. In my case, I had to a couple of times I had to uninstall and reinstall the cloud connector as well. So because of I had multiple versions installed in my system of Java. So that is the reason why I had to actually do a couple of iterations for installing the cloud connector successfully. However, once your cloud connector is installed successfully, the first thing that you can actually verify is that within the services, you should be able to see, once it is installed successfully, you should be able to see what do you say, a service which is already installed within the system. As you can see over here, it's already installed and it is running. So it becomes your startup type of the service. So you don't have to do it, but yet as soon as you install, it might not, in case you just want to, start the cloud connector immediately, maybe I would recommend that you just come to the services part of the Windows and restart it. However, in my case, because I just try to install some new software, I always try to restart the system. So after even when I reinstalled the Java, I just try to restart the system. In the same way, when I finished my installation of SAP Cloud Connector, I just tried to restart it. So which actually helped me to run the cloud connector, or at least as soon as when I just tried to start the system, SAP Cloud Connector was running automatically. So this is something which is very important, which you have to keep a note of it. And coming to about how do we start this cloud connector, I faced a couple of issues when I was trying to run what do you say, when I'm trying to run the cloud connector. So basically the login, whatever the default login for cloud connector would be, uh, the default login for the cloud connector would be like HTTPS. I can just make a note of it. HTTPS, localhost 8443. So basically, your cloud connector runs on port 8443, and this will be prompted, and it will be actually a user input field, but the default setting or the default port is 8443. So while you are trying to install the cloud connector, this port number by default will be chosen by the application, software cloud connector application. So it just tries to pick this one of the port, um, and it's not HTTP, it's HTTPS. And then what you can do is that you can just, in my case at least, what happened is when I just tried to open this link, the local host with this port in Google Chrome, it was not working. I don't know why, but however, I just tried to open this link on Internet Explorer, and then it started working. So the first time when you log in, the username is always administrator, and the password would be manage. So these are a default username and passwords. So, but as soon as you just log in for the first time, uh, then the system will make sure it prompts you to change the password. So make sure that you have a proper password. But username, anyways, we also have an option to edit the username, but I didn't try it. But yeah, you also have a possible to rename or edit the name of the username as well, provided you have proper authorizations to change the username as well. Okay, so I would quickly log into the system, because for me, my machine already, um, uh, what do you say, the cloud connector is installed, and I just try to start this cloud connector within Internet Explorer. So once you log in, so I already configured a system. So here you can see that I already configured a system. These will be showing my details, but on the initial page of the connector, you would end up having different information over here. For example, your connector ID to which, from which local machine, what is your IP address, what would be your sub account details and everything, which will come up in the later section. But yeah, but anyways, I'm using a trial version, and what should be the local display name, as well as which region I build, which part of the the trial version I'm trying to use. So I just try to choose all this information. And next thing is that whenever you want to configure how to on-premise situation or the direction, so the first thing is that you have to navigate to cloud to on-premise system, and you have to click on this add. So once you click on add, so you end up having the ABAP system over here. So yeah, there are a couple of options. So, but in our case, we just try to choose the ABAP system, because here we are trying to connect to one of the on-prem system, which is running on S4 HANA, on HANA, so which is of 1909. So I just try to choose ABAP system, and I just try to click on next. Here I did not change anything, because I still use the protocol as HTTP, because when our the cloud connector basically takes care of all the security settings or the communication, whatever that has to be performed or has to be done between on-premise and cloud system will be taken care by the cloud connector and its communication framework. So I just tried to choose the protocol as HTTP. And next, in the next screen here, you can actually find the internal host and port number. The internal host and port number are more or less like, in my case, I didn't try to, break my head. I just tried to execute a transaction called NWBC. And in NWBC, basically, when I execute this transaction, NWBC from my backend system, which is S4HANA, it just tries to open up a new browser, the transaction in a new browser. So on the browser, I can actually see the host name as well as the port number, as well as the protocol, as well as the path to the application. So as the service, everything I can look at it. So the most important thing is that you need to get the host name as well as port number from this link, because I didn't had other options. Basically, there are many other options to get this internal host as well as port number. But one of the easiest way which I found is that you can just execute NWBC transaction. So basically it just pops up, or it just tries to show you make use of the same host name as well as the port number which are configured in the system. So I just try to take the advantage of this transaction and try to identify the host name as well as the port number on which on which I'm running S4HANA, on which I'm running S4HANA. And I just gave these details, and following that, you end up having next screen, you'll end up having a virtual host as well as virtual port. Virtual host, make sure you don't give it as the same name as what you have given in the internal host. Just try to change or give it a different name. But in my what I did in the case of port is I still kept the port number same as it is. I don't know why, but somehow it was working, because if I tried to give a different port number, it was actually not working for me in my case. And then finally, it finishes up. So after that, the one important thing which you have to make a note of it is that once you added the system, you still won't be able to actually see the result as reachable. The very important thing that you have to make sure is that you add all the relevant resources that are needed to connect, or that will be actually utilized from the on cloud premise. So basically, you end up using all these services which are basically activated in the backend system of your on-premise S4HANA. So make sure that all these services are enabled and active, not only just the top service, but also the sub-services which are under this so these services, you can activate them. But these services have to be, you have to make sure that these services are enabled. And also you have to make sure that your OData settings, the gateway application settings, the gateway configuration has performed, has been executed in your backend system, so that your cloud can actually connect and communicate by requesting and responding to different messages. So after you add, make sure that you have the access policy as for example, here, you give the name of the path. I didn't change. You have to make it active, and then you have to make sure that path and all the subpaths. So that was the reason why I was just trying to mention that whenever you are trying to activate a service within in the backend, so make sure that the service itself is not just active. Make sure that the sub services which are under that main service are also active. So that's the reason why I just you have to make sure that all the services are active. And in this context, basically, whenever you try to add a service, make sure that you enable this checkbox, click on save. And finally, once all your the settings are the paths or whatever the resources that are needed to connect from cloud to on-premise are basically enabled, And then finally what you do is like you go ahead and click on this connection settings, we know or availability of the system, where you can actually check whether your cloud to on-premise cloud connector settings were perfectly or was successful. So if you see that the check result was reachable, that means your system is actually, so that means your cloud connector is configured successfully to on-premise system. Now that we have included or connected the on-premise system, now next thing is that you end up using, you have to obviously connect, have different destinations. All right, so the different destinations that you can actually look at is that the different destinations are like, you have made sure that the cloud understands what is your local system or what is your on-premise system, but now you have to make also the on-premise system that what is the cloud system. In that context, what you do is that you come to your cloud platform cockpit, and you go to your cloud connector settings. So whatever the cloud connector, whatever the systems that you have exposed um, on the cloud connector side, those systems will appear over here under the cloud connector. But now the point is that you have to make a destination, because whatever the what do you say, the um, on on-demand applications, yeah, this is one of the term which I was just struggling to get the struggling to get it. But yeah, on-demand applications, basically you have all these on-demand applications on cloud, and these applications require some amount of a certain amount of data from your backend system, and this backend system has to be kind of a destination for all the on-demand applications, so that the applications can actually fetch, request, and pull the information to the backend system. So in that case, what we do is that now we create the destinations. So in the destination part, basically we end up creating a new destination. In this context, I can just show you the destination, whatever that I already configured. So let me just walk you through one of the destinations which I created, okay, for connecting my backend system. So if I just show you the different settings, what I did, so I just tried to give some random name, and I still choose the protocol as HTTP. I just gave a random name over here. I just left the location ID as blank. So this location ID as well as is will also be prompted while you are trying to create the destination, or on the cloud connector side. So I left the location ID even blank on the cloud connector end as well as here. So I just left it blank. And the next thing is that in the case of this URL, I made sure that I didn't give the actual URL of the system, which I was just trying to mention earlier, where I just tried to execute a transaction called NWBC, where I could actually get the details about host as well as the port number. But rather what I did is now, because now we connected the virtual host with the internal host, now we cannot use that internal host. So what we are trying to do is like whatever the system name that has been exposed as a host from the cloud connector, we have to use the same name. So what I did is that I just tried to copy the same name, whatever the virtual host name that I configured in the cloud connector. I just made that as a URL path in the destination. So excuse me, guys. So after this, what you can see is that this is one of the URL which I used, and I just gave some, yeah, this is a drop down. Basically the proxy type, usually it would be internet. You have a couple of options. For the first time when you just try to create a destination, the default would be like internet. But what I did is like I just tried to choose on-premise, and I just gave some basic authentication and username as well as password, whatever that is actually used to log into the backend system. Okay. And then what I did is like I gave few additional properties which are recommended as well as needed. So you have to give the client ID to which you are you have a possibility to log in, and the client ID where in which you have the possibility of which your user is active and enabled and valid. And then what I did is like I have enabled a web ID enabled, which I made this parameter or attribute as true. I also gave the name of the system, which is, and I also gave the web ID usage. So in that case, I just tried to say like, the web ID can actually generate the OData services as well as ABAP as well as dev ABAP. So I have a possibility to create OData services as well as ABAP as well as, build or integrate or execute ABAP applications from web IDE, which will be actually deployed into the backend application server. So after trying to put all this information and save, you should be able to check, and this should be the message. So with this, what I would say is that basically we try to configure a cloud connector, uh, as well as we try to make the cloud connector to understand what is our on-premise system, as well as we also try to make sure that whatever the applications, on-demand applications that will be on the cloud end, will also be aware of what kind of destination that it has to reach out to fetch different informations. I hope you liked this video. Have a nice day. Thank you.